his revelation on Mount Sinai, the burning bush, and the beginnings of his holy mission to free the Hebrew people. All right, now we're going to get into the 10 plagues. We're up to chapter 7 here, verse 8. The 10 plagues encompass chapter 7, verse 8 to chapter 11, verse 10. The 10 plagues are great, awesome signs and wonders, miracles accomplished by God in order to allow the Pharaoh of Egypt to let the Hebrews depart. Each plague, except the last plague, the death of the firstborn, has a basis in natural phenomena or diseases that occur in Egypt annually or at intervals during the months of July till April. The plagues form an orderly series. Each is related to its successor with rapid cumulative severity and moves to a stunning climax, the death of Egypt's firstborn. The plagues are partly ordinary events that are intensified by the hand of God, who is acting in Israel's behalf. Sometimes God directly affects the plague. This is in Exodus chapter 9, verses 12 to 29. Sometimes Moses and Aaron command as God's agent. This is in Exodus chapter 7, verse 9 and 10, and chapter 8, verses 16 to 17. And sometimes Moses himself calls down the plague. This is in chapter 7, verses 14 through 18, and chapter 9, verses 8 to 22 or 23, somewhere in that vicinity. Okay. Now, the first plague. Let's get to the first plague. The pollution of the Nile. This is in Exodus chapter 7, verses 14 to 15. Moses meets Pharaoh at the riverbank with a challenge to Egypt's very existence. The Nile, the annual rise of the Nile River, brings life to Egypt's soil. It's the source of all fertility. But on rare occasions, the water becomes putrid because it's carrying decaying algae from the vast swamplands of the Sudan, and the waters join with Ethiopia's Blue Nile. Well, what is the Blue Nile? Well, the Blue Nile was then blue because of the active volcanoes that spew sulfuric lava and ash about every 100 years or so. So the Nile turns red and the waters become undrinkable. The plague of blood reflects a natural phenomena, this reddish color, that happens during the height of the summer. The particles of earth and minute organisms are a fact. Now, in the story, Aaron's rod strikes the waters, and all the river turns blood red and is polluted. All right, let's move on to the second plague, frogs. This is in chapter 7, verse 25 to chapter 8, verse 14. The mud of the Nile, after the seasonal overflowing, is a natural place for frogs to generate. When the flooding subsides and leaves, essentially it leaves heaps of dead frogs all over the land. Now, the frogs multiply because the ibises, the frog-eating birds, have vanished. Now, the ibises spare frequent occurrences of frog overflow, but the birds have vanished. So the frogs multiply and pile into people's homes. Pharaoh momentarily recognizes the Lord's power, and Moses, to enhance the miracle or divine wonder, promises to pray that the plague will cease at a specified or designated time. All right, the third plague, which is gnats, and the fourth plague, which is flies. This is in chapter 8, verses 16 to 32. There's swarms of gnats and flies. These noisome insects have bred and multiplied over these stagnant pools of water. From ancient times, the stinging of gnats have plagued Egypt, especially in the summer and autumn months when the Nile is receding from its overflow. The stagnant pools are a breeding ground for the insects. Now, magicians in the text cannot match this miracle. They can't halt it. They can't match it. So they confess to Pharaoh that this is the finger of God. The magicians are convinced, but Pharaoh is not. Now, flies, the fourth plague, is a variant of the preceding plague, number 3, gnats. It's a type of poetic parallelism. This myriad of flies and the isolation of Goshen, the Hebrew settlement area, they're not plagued by the flies. They're left alone. The scourge does not affect the Israelites. Gains further concession from the Egyptian god king, who now gives Moses permission to go beyond the border, but he is still suspicious of the Hebrews' intentions. But this concession is not enough. Let my people go, says Moses. Now the fifth plague, which is the cattle murion. This is in chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. Essentially, this is anthrax and hoof and mouth disease that results from the conditions created by the former plagues. The disease strikes the farm animals, which is, of course, a principal source of food. The disease is spread by the mosquitoes, by the gnats, by the flies. This time, Moses gives Pharaoh 24 hours' notice. We have the sixth plague, which is boils. This is in chapter 9, verses 8 through 18. Ashes from the kilns are thrown into the air, which causes boils to break out, sores in humans and animals alike. These skin outbreaks are parallel to the previous plague, in which the cattle are diseased. Now the people are covered with boils. The seventh plague, hail and thunderstorms. This is in chapter 9, verses 18 through 35. God now unleashes the full fury of heaven, thunder, rain, lightning, and hail. The scourge of hail is a very, very rare occurrence in Egypt. Thunderstorms destroy both the entire season's crops and the mud brick homes of the disease-ridden peasants. Now, the ineffectiveness of the plagues up to this point is not due to God's weakness, but to his patient determination to demonstrate his divine power and authority as the sovereign of the earth and the Lord of the universe. Now, Pharaoh admits for the first time, confesses to his priests that he is beaten, and moves to appease the foreign god Yahweh without making further concessions to the Hebrews. The seventh plague demonstrates the fact that the earth belongs to God and not to earthly kings. The powers of nature serve God's purpose. There are still plants that have survived for the locusts to eat, which is the next plague. Now, this dates the seventh plague to the middle of January, when the crops begin to mature. Now,